Oh man. Man, oh man. Halloween 2. Nothing bad is going to happen if I trash this, right?
Get me a doctor now!
I met this 6-year-old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face. The blackest eyes. The devil's eyes.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
So yeah, Shout Factory, or I keep doing that, Scream Factory, whatever. They released the first ever 4K UHD of Halloween 2, which in and of itself, more than enough reason to pick this sucker up if you're a big fan of the franchise. I mean, it's the first 4K version. It's got a new 2021 4K scan. Looks beautiful. That is the theatrical cut.
Right.
And yeah, it has a Dolby Atmos mix. It's great. Looks amazing. Again, I'm not really going to dig too much in this series into the deets here because you can go to like Films at Home or whatever, and he'll cover everything you need to know. It They look great. That's the bottom line. They look great. They sound great, and for the most part, they have all the special features you would want. Although again, not a whole lot in the way of new stuff, and not really everything you could possibly ask for. There are still featurettes and stuff out there that were not ported over, but it's a gripe. When it comes right down to it, it's just a gripe. This is another great setup.
Michael Myers.
Michael Myers.
Yeah, he was the guy that was after you.
So there's one new thing here mentioned, and then the other thing that's new is not here. So there is an ad gallery that's new to this disc. It's whatever. It's just a bunch of newspaper clippings in a slideshow. Who gives a shit? But it also mentions on the back there's an interview with production manager Jeffrey Chernov. That is the only new extra that is actually mentioned on the back. And that is not here. It is not on the disc. Unless I am missing something, which I mean, I ripped this to my computer. It was not in the ripped files. I don't know where it would be. That is not a thing that exists on this disc. And I did not check. I'm sure that they probably put out something saying that it wasn't going to make it and that, they already had the design out and printed. So I guess they just, for whatever reason, they couldn't use it. So, or didn't get it. So, yeah, that's unfortunate. There's nothing really new here, but you do get those two audio commentaries, one with director Rick Rosenthal, the other one with Dick Warlock. That's pretty cool. Honestly, everything I need. So, let's talk about Halloween 2.
It's a Celtic word. Samhain. It means the Lord of the Dead.
Oh, Halloween 2. If ever there was a more frustrating sequel. While Friday the 13th saw a noticeable upgrade in its own second installment, at least in my opinion, and A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge would eventually gain a rightful place among the canon of the underrated sequels out there, and, a bunch more. Halloween 2, for me, has always been a bit of a wet fart made palatable with one of those little pine tree air fresheners. A pretty strong pine tree air freshener, mind you, but still one of those.
I want to believe you, but I gotta be sure. I can't stop until I'm certain.
It has a lot to love and enjoy, and some of its sequences rank among the very best in the franchise, but it also has a dulled edge and a workman mentality that I just can never get over. And hey, this is going to be a bit of a contrarian take, by the way. People fucking love this movie, and I'd like to explain to you why I think it's fine.
That girl, that Strode girl, that's Michael Myers' sister. Shut up, Tommy!
Probably the most famous plot twist in horror history, outside of Janet Leigh's death in Psycho, is the revelation that, spoilers by the way, this is gonna be full of spoilers, so, you know, just fucking, if you somehow never seen Halloween 2, maybe get on that. But the revelation that her daughter, Jamie Lee Curtis, was in reality playing the sister of shapely murderer Michael Myers all along in the 1978 classic, Halloween. Of course, what normies will forget, and all of you know already because you're a bunch of fucking nerds, is that this twist only came about in Halloween 2 because John Carpenter, trying drunkenly to pump out a sequel in the midst of slasher mania, decided to include it as a simple way of filling time. Per the man himself, NBC purchased the rights to show Halloween on network television, but our movie was too short for them. So we needed to add time. I think we had to add, 8 minutes or something like that? I don't remember. And there was nothing to add. The first movie was just what I wanted to make. I don't have anything to add. So I came up with this brother thing. It was awful, just awful. But I did it. Carpenter was also at the time overseeing the additional sequences for the TV cut of the original Halloween, which would now include references to this, ill-advised twist, thereby baking in the idea that it was intended all along for people who grew up watching Halloween on TV. And frankly, as I feel I've made it very clear before, I fucking hate this twist. To me, it deprives Michael Myers of what makes him scary and forces logic on a creation that benefits most from an absence of insight. The less you know about Michael Myers, the better, but here we are with a simple motivation that basically deprives him of anything resembling true horror. In the first film, he was the boogeyman, a shape you see outside your window symbolizing fate itself, potentially coming for you at any time with no way to combat it other than running away and hoping for the best. Now, all you have to do is not socialize or live near a Strode, and bada bing bada boom, you got yourself an easy out. The biggest issue with the twist is that it's just unnecessary. It's a time filler that gives Donald Pleasant something to do and allowed the hospital plot to feel like a full movie. Once everything culminates, it's meaningless, since the intention was for this to be the end of the story. It doesn't really add to Laurie's character, her struggle, anything. It's just there, limp and useless. Luckily, my reaction is a bit dramatic here. While the twist is dumb as shit, it comes late in the film, and as I said, doesn't really add anything to the overall narrative. In fact, you could cut it out, give the film a few nips and tucks, and it would make basically no difference, other than making the film better. Halloween famously ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, although it's one with no intention of giving the audience a conclusion. It's meant to creep out theatergoers, to twist the knife and say that this isn't over, that the boogeyman is still out there, and this will not be resolved. You could be next. He could be waiting in the parking lot of the theater ready to jump out and stab the ever-loving fuck out of you. He could be waiting for you when you get home or patrolling your backyard while you sleep. He is out there. Unfortunately, when it came time to make the sequel, the choice was obvious. We had to continue the night he came home. And you know, fair enough. I would do the same. It's extremely natural and on the surface a pretty good idea. You have a heroine the audience already knows and who really did very little beyond a few lucky stabs, so she has places to go character-wise. All the remaining characters, like Dr. Loomis and Sheriff Brackett, have a reason to be there already, and heck, you even have a handful of names mentioned within the first film you could bring back. I should probably mention that there was another option for Halloween 2, although exactly how far it got is tough to pin down. All we really know for a fact is that it was going to be set a few years later in an apartment complex where Laurie was still contending with the ghosts of her past while in college, only to be confronted by the shape once again. Dr. Loomis would also have appeared, but it's unclear if the sister twist would have been part of it. My guess is that it wouldn't, if only because the time issue wouldn't be, well, an issue, theoretically. I suppose there is the question of what to do to get us out of the complex every so often, much like how Halloween 2 pops back and forth between the Loomisby plot and the hospital, but also like, a little claustrophobia isn't really a problem when you're talking about a horror film. In fact, it'd be quite a boon, and you would theoretically have more things to set up. Anyway, thanks to the open-endedness of Part 1 and the pretty humdrum setting of this one, Halloween 2 winds up feeling like an overlong third act, where the apartment idea would necessitate additional character setup and a look into Laurie Strode's new life and how she has to use technology to feel safe in her new, insulated world. The film as is doesn't really worry about it beyond some stray comments to remind theatergoers of what they might have forgotten from 3 years previously. We're basically just thrust into a Quantum of Solace-esque wrap-up that would work very well stripped down to a 30-minute finale, but struggles under the weight of a 90-minute runtime. Perhaps if we were given just a bit more time with Michael in Haddonfield proper, perhaps mimicking some of his creepier antics in part 1, this wouldn't be an issue, but who knows? That's not the movie we got. The additional characters we're given and who we're asked to feign interest in are all supporting cast destined to meet the hands of fate. Or pass out behind a steering wheel. Whatever works. What's worse here is that one main character is on a fool's errand to neatly explain Michael Myers and mispronounce Samhain, while the other spends the majority of the film in bed, just kind of passing time while the shape trudges his way to the hospital and picks off the staff one by one, extremely lucky that this clinic is so dead. Literally and figuratively. Much like Halloween Kills, there's a serious lack of a central protagonist. Oddly enough, another film, and I know I'll get hate in the comments for this, but fuck it, did this concept better while basically just ripping off this sequel. That film is See No Evil 2, and it fucking rips, yo. Both, however, suffer from a lack of build-up, though far more so in the case of Halloween 2. Oh, and one last thing about the apartment idea. John Carpenter himself already mined that concept more or less in 1978, 2 months before starting work on Halloween with the TV film Someone's Watching Me, suggesting some root for that idea and proving that it probably would have been better than what we got. Another notable fact most fans are already well aware of is that Carpenter went back after director Rick Rosenthal finished principal photography and added 3 nights of reshoots to help cash in on the gory slashers popularizing the genre at the time, and boost the overall tone and pacing, which he compared to an episode of the hospital drama Quincy M.E., which... yikes. These scenes include the murders of Alice at the start and later the security guard, the stalking sequence wherein Michael hears from the radio where to find Laurie, and the shot of Michael's burning head at the end. Basically, Carpenter felt the film should be more cruel and bloody, and sure enough it is, often to its benefit, so fair play to Carpenter. Also, and this is, I think, just part of his script, not reshoots or anything, but the bit with the kid who had a razor in his candy is also extremely mean-spirited, but hilarious. One of my favorite parts of the movie. The blood-draining death feels oddly Italian and dreamlike, and the murder of the doctor and nurse in his office, while a bit superfluous, it does help move the pacing along. While I do feel like overall the film does drag here and there, I can certainly see how it might have been worse, and it makes sense that when he took over the edit, Carpenter apparently cut 14 minutes of Rosenthal's footage. More of these nurses and orderlies fucking around for nearly 15 minutes? Big ol' no thank you. Side note, Lance Guest and Leo Rossi are fine, but neither really amounts to much. Rossi is fun, and his moments by themselves are highlights, but then he's killed off far too soon, and in one of the more restrained moments.
Sorry. I guess I just fuck up all the time.
Now, Guest, he has humanity, and it's wise to give him a small connection to Laurie, but then he doesn't fucking do anything, so who cares? Anyway, the cruelty of this film is just... mwah. The death of Nurse Franco is, of course, the highlight. The way Michael appears from around the corner, brandishes the scalpel, and picks her up, while extremely unlikely to work in real life, perfectly encapsulates the raw power of the shape. This is obviously one of the more restrained moments, and props to Rosenthal for making it work so well. Now that said, I know plenty of people, including Tommy Lee Wallace and Erwin Yablans, didn't like Carpenter's dismissal of his old school methods from Halloween, and the sort of theater of the mind style that he had employed. In the old Shout Factory doc that's included on this disc, they make a point of mentioning the hypodermic scene, and, you know, I just disagree. If they had Carpenter or a similarly strong director in charge, then maybe, but the fact is that what Halloween did is tough to pull off successfully, and, you know, we had entered a new age of slasher cinema. And, yeah, people expected gore, so give them gore. You can give gore and still have really effective theater of the mind scares. This movie just doesn't really do that for the most part. There's no scenes of Laurie staring out her window and just, seeing the shape, or nothing equivalent to that. And you know what, just so you don't think I'm ragging on the film, I do think there are big stretches that work really well, but it can very easily turn boring, and according to Carpenter, it did. And in a situation like this where you have such a bland narrative, you need something, and sure enough, what really stands out in Halloween 2 are the mean streak and Michael Myers. Noted Kurt Russell stunt double Dick Warlock took over as Michael Myers in Halloween 2. Uh, and if you haven't heard the story of him getting the part, it's pretty funny. He basically just walked in to Yablon's office wearing the mask and stood there silently. Just quality stuff. He's a shorter Michael, and the obviously yellowed mask doesn't quite fit his face right, but he makes for a gloriously nightmarish figure nonetheless. Unsurprisingly, with his years of experience in stunts, he knew how to embody the monster as initially portrayed by Nick Castle and however many other people in the first film. He's even more robotic in his movements, almost like the Terminator. Just look at him walking through this glass door like an absolute unit. Fucking fantastic. I suppose it does take away a bit that we're obviously dealing with a different, slower Myers, but it doesn't bother me per se. I remember, I think Deborah Hill was the one who said that he was too slow and that he didn't walk right, but I like that he seems so unstoppable that he doesn't try to hurry or rush. He just kind of exists. That's pretty baller. I'd actually say Michael Myers, one of the only slasher killers who I think benefits from being kind of cool. Like Jason, when he gets too cool, it kind of dulls the edge a bit. You kind of want him to be this just kind of, I don't even know what word to use anymore that's politically correct. The thing that he is. And Leatherface kind of needs to be a kind of a bumbling idiot. Freddy Krueger, not so much should be cool. He should be kind of corny and silly to really be effective in his scenes. But Michael Myers, he should just be a cool motherfucker, like straight up. And he's very cool in this movie. I'll agree that he is perhaps a little stiff, and his movements would be copied and made better in the future. In fact, I think James Jude Courtney really nails these strengths in the 2018 continuity, even in Halloween Kills. But yeah, not even sure why I made this its own section. The point is, Dick Warlock fucks. Now, as I mentioned, there are stretches of Halloween that just fucking slay. While most of the early hospital scenes and basically all the Loomis stuff just drag and drag and drag, once the killing really gets going and Laurie is forced to get up and run for her life, the picture picks up considerably. We still have to contend with the dunderheaded sister revelation, completely bereft of the love story between Loomis and the cute deputy, but as we focus in more and more on Michael stalking Laurie, things take off nicely. Basically, from the very moment Lance Guest bonks his noggin onto the end, we're on a non-stop thrill ride, humbled only by that aforementioned twist. He hits the floor in a glorious stunt and borderline iconic shot from above, one of my favorite shots in the movie. Nurse Franco's car won't start, and all the tires in the parking lot are flat. Creepy shit right there. It's such a great revelation when she's just looking around the parking lot and she sees all these fucking flat tires. Beautiful. So she returns to the hospital where she finds Laurie sneaking around, and boom, Michael's absolute banger of an implausible kill. Laurie, injured and drugged, tears through the dark hospital corridors and descends into the basement. Michael, perhaps slightly too slowly, follows her into the bowels of hell, where he's conveniently hung up poor Mr. Garrett for her to be shocked and surprised by, and seemingly taking notes from Leslie Vernon, Michael catches up only for Laurie to get in a quality box stunt. She finds an elevator, and we're given probably the most relatable moment in the franchise as she waits for the damn thing to make its way down from the top floor. Michael carries the scalpel, content in his manhood and no longer needing to prove himself with an impossibly long butcher knife. Finally, she gets on board and makes it to the parking lot where she hides in one of the impotent cars, which, considering she is barely managing as is, fair enough. Things grind to a halt momentarily so we can get the most of the Donald Pleasance budget, and with 18 minutes including credits to go, we learn some bullshit that will leave a long shadow on the franchise. But hey, fuck that noise, back to the car. Jimmy gets in to drive off, but the car won't start and he's concussed as fuck and passes out. Our potential male hero just as impotent as the car itself, leaving our injured heroine to fend for herself. Of course, Laurie doesn't know the cars are all fucked up, so she tries to turn it on to no avail, potentially signaling the shape. Loomis, nurse plot device, and Officer Deadmeat make it to the hospital, and Laurie tries feebly to cry out, but just as she manages it, they've already gone inside. We feel her frustration. It's awful.
Dr. Loomis.
You stay with me and shut up.
Loomis and company don't make it far, though, before Laurie manages to run from the Shape, who has apparently been on a wild goose chase away from the hospital up to this point, and does another take of her pleading to Tommy in the first film. The Shape smashes through the door and gets shot to fuck by Loomis. Officer Deadmeat does what he's there to do.
Stop breathing! No!
Loomis and Laurie flee, wind up in a room full of gas tanks. Sure, Loomis gets scalpeled, and Laurie wills herself into 2 crackerjack shots that blind our big dude. It's silly, but there's no denying the sheer glory that is this shot of Michael's bleeding eyes. Sure, you can plainly see Dick Warlock's own very much unharmed eyes, but hey, this isn't fucking Cinema Sins, so whatever. Loomis saves the day by sacrificing himself, never to be seen again, while Laurie runs and just barely survives an aggressive explosion. Michael walks out, engulfed in flames, seemingly the invincible monster we all were scared he might truly be, and then he falls to the floor, dead, his face melting away in the flames, just so we get the idea that he is, in fact, dead as shit. One quick scene in the denouement, and boom! Halloween 2, ending with an absolute clinic of a final 25 minutes. See, despite me having a lot of qualms each time I watch this sucker, I remember during this chunk that it's kind of all worth it. In fact, that third act of this extended third act is so strong I could probably forgive the sister thing if it weren't for what it would do to transform the series. Carpenter, of course, couldn't have imagined the kind of terror he would cast upon the world. He figured this was the end of Michael Myers, so fuck it, who cares? Kill him. It's a bad twist, but it's not the kind to completely ruin the movie. The fact you could just get rid of it actually nullifies it quite a bit. It's so passive that it really can't cause that much harm. Until the sequels. There's something uniquely frustrating for me about the way the series continued from here. Carpenter tried to kill off both Loomis and Myers at the end of this film, figuring, hey, what are they gonna do if I just burn the fucker to shit? Well, John didn't foresee the ease with which an 80s slasher could resurrect itself, or how fucking stupid it could be, but for later. Nor how much his drunkenly pooped out twist might be embraced by the Halloween fandom. Be it the Thorn trilogy, H2O, the zombie films, it just came back again and again until David Gordon Green and Danny McBride tossed that garbage out in Halloween 2018, only to enact many of the same mistakes as Halloween 2 in this year's Halloween Kills. But that's a story for another time. Halloween 2 is a solid enough sequel. It's far from the best slasher sequel out there. Heck, it's not even the best sequel of 1981. But it's got enough artistry, enough bloodletting, and enough of the shape fucking up some lives to make for some quality entertainment. And it led directly to the best sequel of the franchise. Go watch a movie.
You don't know what death is. You don't know what death is.